Guys, I'd mentioned, of course, November 25th, those halcyon days of 2019 that we look back on. That same day, LVMH also announced its deal to acquire Tiffany. Of course, it had been rumored for some time. Others had reported on the possibility of it. $135 a share in cash. Yesterday, I spent some time talking about the possibility of LVMH trying to potentially renegotiate, get a price cut. And we got a statement from LVMH, well, overnight for us, but their morning. And here it is. And then let me give you some sense as to what really is going on here as well. The statement was pretty straightforward, but there's an odd part of it. The board of directors of LVMH met on Tuesday, June 2nd, and notably focused its attention on the development of the pandemic and its potential impact on the results and perspectives of Tiffany and Company with respect to the agreement that links the two groups. They did go on to say, though, that considering the recent market rumors, LVMH confirms on this occasion that it is not considering buying Tiffany shares on the market. Now, nobody had been talking about the possibility of them buying shares on the market, at least not for a couple of months. That was around, and in fact, LVMH, I believe, was investigating the possibility initially when we saw and were visiting the lows on the broader markets back in March, and Tiffany was trading well below the 135, the idea being that, well, maybe they can at least cheapen it for themselves by buying some stock. Right now, they're not even in a position to do that. Tiffany knew about the board meeting. They shared material non-public information on their current financials with LVMH's board, which would make it even impossible for them to even consider it. But it was an odd addition here to this statement that basically just continues to fan the flames of that possibility that LVMH would try in some way to wrest a price concession or even say, we're not doing this. Now, I can tell you that on the Tiffany side of things, people familiar with their thinking tell me if in any way, shape, or form LVMH tries to propose a price cut or anything else, they're going to go to court. A contract is a contract. This one seems to be fairly tight, although, again, in these matters, there is always questions as to just how tight. But they will end up in Delaware. Now, is that just a threat or is that the reality? We'll have to wait and see. But it's very much unclear exactly what Bernard Arnault, the man who runs LVMH, the richest man in Europe, of course, is truly thinking here, other than the possibility of sort of taking things slowly, seeing if these guys breach any covenants at all under their merger agreement and or seeing whether there's a possibility of a price cut. But I can tell you that at this point, the Tiffany side, first of all, has heard nothing about that. They were aware of the statement coming out. In fact, they need to be told about these potential statements, and they were aware of it. They were well aware of the board meeting. They have not in any way received any notice of a desire to cut the price or anything else for the deal, and they are prepared to go to court at the first sight of that, is what I'm told. Very much unclear whether Bernard Arnault wants to be in court in Delaware. You know, these contracts, Jim, left and right, people are just trying to say, don't worry about it. It's just a contract. Come on. But we'll see. One could fully understand, given the performance of the business, why they'd want to cut the price, but whether or not they're going to be in a position to remains very much uncertain.
The first thing I thought of when you did this story, David, was, is Tiffany paying rent? And I say that because Simon Property is suing Gap over skipped rent payments, and we know Gap can pay. I mean, they're a real company. But yeah, you're right. I mean, people say, hey, listen, it's rent. I mean, do we really focus on rent? I mean, isn't that the whole point? Forgiveness. So I'd like to know what Tiffany's got some very high rent places. Is Tiffany going to have to renegotiate if LVMH doesn't buy another litigate? But there's a lot of stuff in flux in retail that we don't talk about, including the inability of a lot of retailers to think that they got to pay up. It is incredible to me how many retailers have skipped. And I know Mickey Drexler talked this morning about them. But whoa.
Yeah, including LVMH, which apparently didn't pay rent in certain areas. We know they can. I believe Tiffany was paying. But it goes to the point that if there's an opportunity for them to take advantage of, perhaps they will try and take advantage of it. And in this case, of course, the question is whether the lack of performance of Tiffany's business, given the pandemic, given everything that's going on, will give them some sort of reason. Right now, they don't have one under the contract. They really don't, it would appear. And again, there are plenty of lawyers poring over these things who conceivably can try to find some sort of hole. But if you give it enough time, perhaps they do. Maybe that's part what's going on here. But this statement did nothing to calm nerves. At the same time, we seem to understand what the game may be on the LVMH side. See if it's possible. Hey, if I can get $1 billion off, why wouldn't I try, right, Jim?
Absolutely. I don't blame him one bit. Obviously, a contract's a contract, but I'd love to know who the lawyers are here, because that would often determine. We know sometimes the lawyers get it right, David, right?
Yeah. Well, listen, that's why the lawyers are important in drawing things up, and this contract is a pretty tight one. In this environment, there's a lot of concern about existing deals. We've talked about as well about Taubman and Simon, contract of which is seen as just as tight as it could possibly be. It doesn't mean that people or investors aren't going to continue to be concerned as we watch Tiffany shares sort of languish $20 below the price. Of course, they're still a ways away from being anywhere near closing it. It could be August, September in terms of the antitrust approvals, and that's kind of slow moving, including Australia, where apparently they need approvals as well.